They say true love endures time. But what if time passes and there are no more answers than questions? I believed that 5 years together were proof. That every morning we spent together, every fight, and every night in his arms were the building blocks of our future. I believed that when a man gets down on one knee with a ring in his hand, it means, I chose you, forever. But it turned out that even after 5 years, you can hear the most terrible thing. I'm not sure I want to marry you. This story is not just about disappointment. It's about how broken dreams force us to find ourselves anew. My name is Allison, and I never thought I would find myself in a situation like this. I've always been a girl who believed in love. Since I was a child, I imagined getting married, wearing a snow-white dress, and my husband, with tears in his eyes, telling me that this was the best day of his life. But life has a strange habit of breaking our expectations at the most unexpected moment. Eric and I met 5 years ago in a coffee shop in downtown Portland. It was February, a damp, rainy month when it seems like the sun has forgotten about your home. I arrived there after the steam, shivering from the cold and trying to warm my fingers on a paper latte cup. He was sitting by the window, his laptop on his desk, which he occasionally pushed aside to take notes in a notebook. I was studying journalism at the time, and he worked in IT. He looked focused, with slightly disheveled hair and a dark blue sweater that had something indescribably homey about it. Our eyes met as I sat down at the next table. He smiled. I smiled back. "Excuse me," he said to me a minute later. "Do you happen to know where the nearest outlet is? My laptop is about to shut down." "Yes." I pointed to the wall next to me. "Right here, but we'll have to move a little." "I'll arrange that," he said, smiling. And he moved closer to me. That was the beginning. We talked for almost 2 hours, and I was late for class. But that didn't matter. After that meeting, we started seeing each other almost every day. Eric was attentive, witty, and, as it seemed to me, very sincere. A year later, we moved together into a small apartment on the east side of the city. It was our little nest, with imperfect tiles in the bathroom, a tiny kitchen, and huge windows through which the sun shone in the morning. We chose furniture together, argued over the color of the curtains, but still fell asleep in each other's arms, smiling. I had been waiting for an offer, probably since the 3rd year of our relationship. All my friends started getting married one after another. I tried not to pressure them, although sometimes I would carefully hint. We were at his cousin's wedding once, and I asked with a smile, "Which one of us do you think will be the first to do something like this?" Eric hesitated for a moment, then said, "I hope so. But I want everything to be perfect." He always talked about perfection. The perfect moment, the perfect time, the perfect financial situation. Over time, I began to realize that this was his way of avoiding specifics. Last summer, we went on a little vacation to the Oregon coast. It was warm, the sea breeze tickled our skin, and the sunset was so beautiful it seemed unreal. We sat on the sand, barefoot, holding hands, and suddenly, Eric got down on one knee. My heart jumped out of my chest at that moment. "Allison," he said, a little worried, "you are my light, my stability, and my best friend. I can't imagine life without you. Will you marry me?" I screamed, "Yes," even before he could get the ring. It was one of the happiest days of my life. We returned to Portland engaged and immediately began planning our wedding. At first, it was just ideas, by the ocean or in the woods. Lots of guests or a small celebration. Then there were lists, calls, reservations. I was inspired, immersed in Pinterest, talking to planners, trying on dresses. And Eric changed. A little, barely noticeable. He began to avoid discussing details. He often said he was tired. He postponed meetings with photographers. He didn't want to talk about the budget. I justified it. Work, stress. We all get tired sometimes. But deep down, something was already starting to crack. I didn't want to believe that this was a sign. And then came the evening when everything changed. It was the end of October. We had just finished dinner, and I was discussing how beautiful it would be to decorate the hall with garlands of autumn leaves. Eric was silent. Then, putting his fork down on his plate, he looked at me with an unusually serious expression. "Allison," he began, "I should have said this earlier, but I'm not sure I'm ready to get married." The world stopped. I felt like I had stopped breathing. "What?" I whispered. He looked away. I don't know if this is the right decision. I'm not sure if this is what I really want." My hands were shaking. My head was foggy. 5 years. 5 years together. And he wasn't sure? "Are you kidding?" His voice trembled treacherously. "We already planned everything. We're engaged, Eric." "I know. And it's my fault. I must have rushed." I thought I wanted this, but now I can't fool you or myself. I stood up from the table, not knowing what to do with myself, where to put these emotions that were tearing me apart. My reality was falling apart right in front of me, piece by piece. This was the beginning of the end, or the beginning of the truth. I didn't know then. I couldn't speak for a long time after that evening. We sat in our kitchen, where we used to make pasta together, listen to music, and laugh at stupid things. But now, there was a wall of silence between us. Eric stared at the floor, and I looked at him as if I were seeing him for the first time. I didn't understand who this man was, who was afraid to look me in the eye. You want to call off the wedding? I asked, after a long, suffocating pause. He gulped air as if the words hurt. I don't know. I just can't pretend anymore that everything is okay. I feel like this isn't mine, that I'm doing something dishonest. Unfair? I laughed bitterly. We've been together for 5 years, Eric. I've planned my whole life with you. And is that unfair? I'm not saying you, I'm talking about myself. His voice broke. I'm trying to figure out why I don't feel happy. Why, when we talk about the wedding, I feel like running away. He said it, running away. And suddenly, I felt not like a bride, but a prisoner. I got up, almost mechanically, and went to the bathroom. I closed it and sat on the toilet seat, my head in my hands. My breathing hitched. It wasn't crying, it wasn't screaming, it was something worse. It was silent panic. I woke up the next morning in our bedroom, alone. Eric was asleep on the couch. I could see him from the hallway, curled up like a baby. His neck was twisted, his back tense. But I didn't wake him. I just stood there, watching. I didn't go to work that day. For the first time in 3 years, I turned off my phone, closed the curtains, and made a strong cup of coffee. My brain was like a radio, playing the same question over and over. How did we get to this point? I went back to my memories. Our first few weeks together, when he would bring me tea with honey because I was hoarse. The nights we would watch space documentaries together and argue about whether Mars would be colonized in our lifetimes. Our trips to Seattle, to Yosemite, to his parents in Vermont. We loved each other, didn't we? Or was I the only one who loved? Eric appeared in the doorway, in pajama pants and a gray t-shirt. He looked tired. His eyes were red, like mine. Can we talk? He said quietly. I nodded, although I wasn't sure if I could stand another conversation. He sat down opposite me, put his hands on the table, but didn't touch me. I want to be honest with you. His voice was hoarse. I didn't plan this. I thought that with time, everything would get better. That the doubts would go away, but the closer the date, the worse it got. I started waking up with anxiety. And I didn't want to hurt you. But even more, I didn't want to break both of our lives. Break, I repeated. What do you think that is? We were silent. Something rumbled outside. A garbage truck. And for the first time in my life, I thought that maybe we had been mistaken for someone else all our lives. That we had been playing a couple that was supposed to be happy. Because we didn't fight. Because we had photos together, trips, a collection of vinyl records. But something had been cracking under this facade for a long time. You don't love me? I asked. And I looked straight into his eyes, without blinking. He was silent for a long time. I love you. But I don't know if this is the kind of love that can withstand everything. Years, children, everyday life, losses. And you've decided this now? I stood up. 3 months after the engagement, he stood up too. He walked around the room as if trapped. I haven't decided, I felt it, and I couldn't keep quiet any longer. You know what's the worst thing? I said quietly. That I felt it, that you're moving away, that you don't care about anything. But I continued to love for two. For you and for myself. Because I believed that we were together. I walked past him without touching him. I opened the closet, took out an old suitcase. I began to pack my things, slowly, calmly, as if in a fog. What are you doing? He asked, seemingly shocked. I'm giving you the space that you obviously need, and a chance for myself not to completely collapse. Eli, please, don't stop me, because I'm going to break. I gathered my things, took my coat, and was already standing in the doorway. His hand hovered in the air, as if he wanted to touch, but didn't dare. I'll come back. Maybe. If you understand what you really feel. And I left. That was the first day of my new life. a life without clear answers, but with a clear awareness that sometimes love is not about holding on, but letting go. I had nowhere to go, and yet I walked. The city was damp, as always. There was an autumn mist in the air, wet leaves glistened on the sidewalks, and I walked through the streets of Portland with a suitcase on wheels, as if I were in a movie. But this wasn't a movie. This was my reality. And it was so alien that I didn't feel like the main character in it, more like a cameo character who had forgotten to be crossed out of the plot. I stopped at the coffee shop where Eric and I had first met. Through the window, I saw that everything was the same there. The red-haired barista, the smell of cinnamon, the same table by the outlet. I stood there and watched, and something inside me clenched. I called my friend, Rachel. "Can you come over?" I asked, and my voice broke. "I don't know where to spend the night." Rachel was golden. 20 minutes later, she arrived in an Uber, hugged me without a word, and put me in the car. Her apartment was small but cozy, with the scent of vanilla and books everywhere. On the floor, on the shelves, even on the windowsills. "You can stay here as long as you want," she said, setting a cup of chamomile tea in front of me. "Even if we drown in boxes of your belongings." I nodded, trying to smile. "I don't even know what to say," I admitted. "I didn't think I'd live to see my wedding disappear from my future." "Maybe it's a good thing it's gone now, not after—" Rachel stopped. "I'm sorry, that's rude." "No." I looked at her straight in the eye. "It's true. It's bittersweet, but it's necessary." We were silent. Then I asked, what if I wasn't the one for him? Or worse, he wasn't the one for me. And I just didn't want to see, Rachel thought. Maybe. Or maybe you both wanted the same thing, but in different ways. That's the trickiest thing. When people look the same way, but see different things. The next few days were strange. It was like I was living in a parallel world. My hand reached for the phone to text him, and then I stopped myself. I found myself Googling how to get over a broken engagement, how to tell if you're still loved, or simply, why does everything hurt so much? My friends wrote to me, sending me hearts, memes, even pictures of dogs and blankets. But no message could fill the silence that was between me and him. Eric didn't write. A week passed. I went back to work, mechanically, emotionlessly. I was sitting in front of my computer, editing an article about a new art installation in a city park, and I found myself not remembering what I had just read. My editor, Mason, came into the office, looked at me, and set down a can of Coke. "Are you okay?" "No." "Do you want to talk?" "No." "Okay, but know that I'm here whenever you need me. And another thing, this material about the installation is crap." I smiled through my tears. "I'll redo it." In the evening, the doorbell rang at Rachel's apartment. "It's for you," she shouted from the kitchen. "I'm not expecting anything." I opened it and saw him, Eric, in a coat. No flowers, no nothing. Just him. And his face was different, tired, tense, but sincere. "Can I?" he asked. I nodded. We sat on the steps near the door. I didn't want to drag. I just didn't know how to collect my thoughts. "And what did you understand?" He looked at me and was silent for a long time. "That I'm afraid. Not of you. Of myself. All my life, I've been the one who plans, the one who postpones. And when something is real, I panic. I started thinking, what if I'm wasting your life? Suddenly, I won't be able to be the man you deserve. So you doubted yourself, not me?" "Yes. But I was so indecisive that I ruined everything." I looked at him and didn't know whether to rejoice or cry. Because those words were needed a week ago, a month, before my heart began to be covered in scars. "What do you want now?" I asked. "I'm not asking you to come back. I just want you to know I love you. And that I'm sorry. Not that I'm not sure, but that I didn't speak honestly with you before." He left. Without demands. Without, "Come back." He just left me with the truth. And I stayed on the stairs, holding the storm inside me. Because it wasn't the end. And it wasn't the beginning. It was that intermediate silence in which the heart decides whether to go again or not. In the days that followed, I felt the emptiness, not where I expected it to be. Not in my heart, although it ached. Not in my apartment, although I had been living among books for a week, where everything smelled of Rachel. But in the silence of the morning, in the habit of making 2 cups of coffee, in gestures, automatic, reflexive, like picking up the phone at 5 p.m. to write, "I'm going home, want to buy something?" But now, home is not a place. It's a fragment, After Eric came that evening, I didn't write to him or call him. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't know who I was in all of this now. An ex-fiancé? A woman who wasn't chosen? A woman who was loved but feared. The strangest thing was that I wasn't afraid of loneliness. I was afraid of the unknown. What should I do with this love now? One evening, I was lying on Rachel's couch, flipping through old photos on my phone. Most of them were of Eric and me, at a cafe, at the park, with his sister Julie and their dog, Milo. I remember Milo jumping into my lap for the first time, and Eric said, "He doesn't do that to everyone. It's a sign." I laughed then. Now, those words seemed ironic. I came across a video of us standing on the beach. Sunset. He holds me from behind, kisses my neck. One of my friends is secretly filming us. We don't notice. And in that video, all the magic I didn't invent. It was there. I turned off the screen and cried. Rachel sat next to me, wrapped me in a blanket, and silently held my hand. She didn't ask anything. It was the most precious support. "Why do I feel like I can't live without him?" I whispered. "Because you spent 5 years building your life around him," Rachel said softly. "And now you have only you again. It's scary, but it's right, because you have to remember who you are without us." The second week passed. I was starting to come back to myself. I bought a new dress, a bright, wild print, what Eric would call too loud. I went to yoga for the first time in months, not because anyone forced me, but because I wanted to feel myself in my own body. On Monday, I signed up for a writing workshop that I had always wanted to attend, but kept putting off because Eric and I have plans. I guess I was reclaiming my space again, but that didn't mean it didn't hurt. On Friday night, my mom called. "I don't want to go," she began very carefully. "But are you okay? Because Dad and I are worried, and we thought maybe you'd come for a week. Home." Home felt strange. If only I could escape to my childhood, where problems were solved with cookies and tea. "Okay," I said. "I'll come on Sunday." My parents' house smelled familiar. Wood, old books, baked apples. I was sitting on the back porch with Dad, and he said, his eyes fixed on the garden, "I always thought you and Eric were a reliable couple. You didn't fight. You were attentive to each other. But, I realized something strange. The silence between you, it wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence of anxiety." I looked at him in surprise. "You mean?" "Well, when two people are silent but understand each other is one thing. And when they are silent because they are afraid to say something that will upset the balance is something else entirely." I thought about those words for a long time. After a week in my hometown, I returned to Portland, different, not healed, but clearer. I no longer wanted to return to a relationship just because it had lasted so long. I began to understand. Sometimes we hold on to the past because we are afraid of a future without someone we know. In the evening, I opened a message from Eric, the first in 2 weeks. "I know you are better off without me, but I still think about you every day. If you want to talk, I am there. If not, I will understand. I love you, forever." I read it. I didn't answer right away. For the first time, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I felt, now I choose my answer not out of pain, but out of respect for myself. Sunday, 8:43 a.m. I sat on the windowsill in Rachel's apartment, a cup of coffee in my hand, and my fingers on the keyboard. Eric's message glowed in blue letters on the screen. I didn't reopen it. I didn't look at it again. It was already inside me, word for word. "I love you, forever." My heart beat cautiously, like something alive and wounded, not yet knowing whether to trust the air around me. I didn't love Eric any less. But for the first time in my life, I wondered, is love enough? At the office, on Monday, Mason handed me a folder with a new assignment. "Will you go to Seattle? A new art gallery is opening there. The owner has an interesting story. A strong woman. A former artist who went through a divorce, changed her life, and made her own art." I raised an eyebrow. "Sounds personal." "That's why I thought of you. And yes, don't look at me. It's not a hint. It's a trust." I smiled. For the first time in a long time, it was genuine. Seattle greeted me with rain. But it didn't feel hostile anymore. On the contrary, the damp air and the noise of the streetcars had a therapeutic effect. I entered the gallery, which smelled of fresh paint, wood, and coffee. The woman who greeted me wasn't quite what I had imagined. She was wearing an old sweater. Her hair was carelessly pulled back, her face had barely noticeable wrinkles around her eyes. But there was a strength in her eyes that I immediately sensed. "Are you Sophie?" I asked. And you're the one who's supposed to be asking me questions? She smiled. Come in. You look like you've just ended an important phone call that you didn't want to end. I laughed, even though her guess was eerily accurate. We talked to her for an hour, then another, and then some more. And somewhere in the middle of talking about paintings, colors, plaster textures, she suddenly said, You know, I once had a man whom I loved like the breath of life. We were together for 11 years. And then I realized that I loved him more than myself. I froze. And that's bad? It's dangerous. Because you start to disappear. Little by little. First, you stop going where you want. Then you keep quiet when you want to scream. And then you don't even notice that you're not drawing. You don't write. You don't dream. Because all you are is just a part of us. And then even love is a cage. I didn't answer. She was silent with me. And then you leave? I whispered. Then you turn yourself around. And if a person is destined to be in your life, they will find you again. But the real one, not the one who has folded herself into a convenient format. In the evening, at the hotel, I opened my laptop and started writing an article. But instead of an art review, I started writing about myself, my story. Not for publication, for purification. I wrote about my first night with Eric, how he stayed the night after the party, and how we talked until morning. About how we went to the lake, and I swam in my dress, and he held a towel on the shore, laughing. And then, how we stopped laughing. How we stopped asking each other, what do you want? How we started building a wedding without building a future. How we chose a restaurant but didn't talk about values. How we postponed conversations that could change everything. I sat in front of my laptop until nightfall, and when I finally closed it, I felt better. Not good, not everything worked out, but better. The next day, I returned to Portland. In the Amtrak car, I stared out the window and thought that the answer wasn't in Eric's words, and not in the silence between us. It was in me. I arrived at the apartment, took off my coat, and almost immediately the doorbell rang. Him. Hi, he said. Can we just be together? I paused, and then I said, come. But not as a fiancé, as someone I haven't met again yet. Eric brought pizza and wine. He sat on the floor. We didn't touch each other. We just talked. About everything. His fears. My losses. His mother, who divorced at 40 and he's afraid of repeating her path. My anxieties about forgetting myself. We talked until 1 a.m, without illusions, without promises. Then he said, I love you. But I know that's not enough, so I'm not asking you to come back. I'm asking you to give us a chance to get to know each other again. Without the past as a commitment. I looked at him, and there was no yes or no in me. There was, I want to see who I am with him now. Not then, not in my dreams. And now. The next morning, I woke up, and for the first time, I didn't think, I have to decide something. I thought, I'm alive, and I'm not scared. After that night with Eric, everything changed. Not instantly, and not in a fairy tale way, but on a deeper level. He didn't come with an offer to restore everything to the way it was. And I didn't ask him to. Instead, we started going for walks, discussing books, laughing about little things that had previously seemed unimportant. For the first time in years, we allowed ourselves to be just two people, not a couple who has to live up to expectations. One evening I said, you know, I thought that if we didn't get married, it was all over. He smiled, not pressing. Maybe love isn't necessarily about a ring on a finger. It can be about how we take care of each other, about respect, about choosing each morning to be together or to go our separate ways. I felt a peace bloom in my chest. This peace didn't depend on the future, it was in the present. Over the months, we learned a new format for our relationship. Open, sincere, sometimes fragile, but honest. Eric stopped being afraid to talk about his doubts, and I stopped being afraid to accept them without judgment. We agreed that if we wanted to, we would talk about the wedding again, but not now. We were building something else right now. One evening, we were cooking dinner together. I chopped vegetables, he grilled steaks. Remember when we said we couldn't be friends after a breakup? I asked, looking at him. Yes, he replied, smiling. And you know, I'm glad we were wrong. I've learned that love isn't always about fireworks and a house with a white picket fence. Sometimes, love is a quiet bond that holds you together when everything else falls apart. It's about the choice you make every day, to stay or to go. But staying isn't about being forced to. It's about wanting to. And if one day that desire doesn't come true, that's okay too. The 5 years we've been together have taught me a lot. Most importantly, I'm worthy of a love that doesn't make me any less. I can be strong, vulnerable, independent, and loved all at the same time. And even if our future together with Eric looks different than I ever imagined, this is still my life, my real life. Sometimes, at night, when the moonlight falls on the floor, I think back to that last conversation. Not with horror, but with gratitude. Because now I know, sometimes true love isn't about holding on tight to someone. It's about giving yourself permission to love in a different way.